on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:37 here on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in on a super busy Wednesday morning. Coming up at 8:15, we're going to speak with Lauren Boland. She's the spokesperson for the National Cherry Blossom Festival, and I've had to promise Julie Gunlock and everyone else in my life that I will not ask her any stupid questions about why those trees don't produce cherries. Apparently,
ornamental.
Yes, I'm. Apparently, people thought that it was a stupid question. It's not Don Lemon, did a black hole swallow up the Malaysian airliner stupid?
You know, when your teacher says there's no stupid questions, they're lying.
There are definitely stupid questions. And I asked one of them. I'm sorry, when you call it a cherry tree, there should be a cherry. That's all I'm saying. All right, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Joining us right now, Representative Mike Waltz, who, by the way, is way too smart for this kind of silly morning show conversation. No, he does not. And he had a lot of very important and serious questions for the generals who oversaw the Afghan withdrawal, resulting in chaos, the abandonment of Americans and our Afghan allies, and, of course, the death of 13 service members. He's a U.S. Army Green Beret, and his book is called Warrior Diplomat. Congressman Waltz, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ray.
There were several moments here that really raised my eyebrows. I'd love for you first to address General Milley confirming that our allies who we left behind were not only tracked down and murdered, but in some cases in, as he put it, pretty brutal ways. Not only is that horrific and immoral and unjust in terms of those men and women who braved the life to help us against the Taliban for the last 20 years, but how does this affect our ability to conduct future endeavors where we need to go into a country and say, hey, work with us, we got your back?
Well, it's devastating, whether it's the Kurds or some tribes in Africa where terrorism is fomenting. We have to be able to go in and work with locals, and the locals that side with us, that stand with the United States against extremism or against our enemies, they're not only putting their lives on the line, they're putting their whole family's lives on the line. And the entire world got the message that America will abandon you. And those allies are still being hunted down as we speak in Afghanistan by the Taliban. And there are still veterans groups in the United States that, on their own dime, many of them have bankrupted themselves trying to get these people alive, or trying to keep these people alive. It's just it's just wrong and heartbreaking.
On Twitter, you said to the Gold Star families who lost their loved ones at Abbey Gate, our government has failed you. You then went on to say this. You said there's a difference between responsibility and accountability, and there's been no accountability taken by the Biden administration. That goes into the fact that very few, I think only 2 Democrats showed up for this hearing. Why are the Democrats so lacking in curiosity and wanting accountability on this issue?
Well, because, it sits at the feet of Joe Biden. And they were, I guess, not too eager to sit and explain in front of the world, or hear questions or commentary on how his failure of leadership, his absence of leadership, and the incompetence at the State Department and at the White House led to this debacle and all of the disastrous results since. And, look, I'll give both General Milley and McKenzie, who was the commander for all Middle East, some credit. They didn't pull punches yesterday. I wish they had done it while in uniform. There's a lot of people who think they should have resigned. But they made it very clear their recommendations were ignored, their recommendations to keep that major air base, which, oh, by the way, is not just for counterterrorism. It's only a couple hundred miles from China. And to keep a small group of special forces, which would have kept the Afghans fighting and would have kept the government and would have kept Al-Qaeda and ISIS from reemerging, which they are right now. So Biden ignored 4 4-star generals who took that advice. And then once he gave the order to fully withdraw, the general said, okay, well, we need to bring American citizens, the embassy, our allies that are at risk. We need to bring everyone. And State Department said no, refused. So, and then that led to the debacle when they reversed course and said, no, now get everybody out at the very last second once chaos had emerged. and led to the disaster that had those Gold Star families there yesterday.
And General McKenzie said in the hearing specifically that they had a complete plan to execute the task of getting citizens at risk Afghanistan's and the withdrawal of the embassy done. They were specifically ordered not to do that. Now, of course, President Biden has said that he took the advice of all the generals, and no one said that there was a problem here. No one had an alternative plan. So someone's lying here. Was anyone from the administration subpoenaed to this hearing? Did you get anyone under oath to explain this discrepancy?
Well, we have Anthony Blinken coming at the end of the month, and I assure you, I'm going to have those questions for. I'm going to have those questions for him.
That's great.
Because at the end of the day, that was his decision, obviously with the approval of the president. And back to everyone sits around and says, well, maybe this wasn't as good, except for President Biden, who says it was an outstanding success.
God.
But not only has not a person been fired. There are journalists now working on pieces on all the people that are being promoted that were responsible for it, and that's just a slap in the face to those families.
Congressman Waltz, you are an Army Green Beret. You still serve, by the way. I think everybody should know that. And so, given that, I would love for you to speak to this issue, not just from how it affects our foreign policy and our future national security interests in deploying troops overseas and the relationship with the countries, which obviously has been damaged by this. But the Marines are the only service branch who have met their recruitment numbers here. There's a lot of theories as to why that's happening, but the way this has been treated, when a man or woman decides to wear the uniform and make that agreement, that oath to give their life if necessary, when parents support and encourage their children to do that, or spouses do that, when you see how the generals in charge of those young men and women's lives and how the civilian oversight from the White House behave themselves here, can you draw a direct line here in terms of the lack of recruitment, the lack of interest in joining a military that is going to behave this way? And how do we fix that, sir?
Yeah, I do think there's a direct correlation, and we're seeing it in the data and polling that a number of groups are making of young people. Look, they want to jump out of planes, kick indoors, be out on a ship, and defend a great nation and do bad things to people who may mean us harm. And when you see the nation's most high-profile, longest war, that if you think about the current generation, they were all born around 9/11, end this way, where we not only abandon our allies that stood and fought with us, we abandoned fellow Americans. We surrendered, we cut and run, and jihad won, and America lost. That was really the message that this sent. And not only did that kick off our adversaries all over the world, whether it was Ukraine or South China Sea, now we have gangs in Haiti that all believe this is opportunity. But, it's people want to be led, and they want to be inspired, and they want to believe that they are working together for a common mission that's going to be successful. And we're seeing in the data now, this is the kicker, that current active duty members are dramatically reducing in those that would recommend that their children join. And the vast majority of new recruits are from military families. And so that's a double loss. It's military members getting out, it's a retention problem, and then you're losing the next generation of military families.
And Congressman, I just want to emphasize this one point, because I know for a fact young officers are trained right now. Mistakes happen, things happen. Nobody is perfect. Bad decisions were made here. The problem is accountability. They are trained as young officers that sure, mistakes are going to happen, but we need to make sure that everybody's held accountable so that we learn from those mistakes. This is why we have, military instruction in schools, academies that are dedicated to this sort of thing. No accountability, Congressman Waltz. That's what really burns people.
Not a single person has been even laterally moved, much less demoted, fired, or relieved. Not one across the entire government for everybody that was involved, and several over at state and the White House are being promoted to ambassadorships and other positions.
I'm glad you and your colleagues are continuing on this. We're looking forward to the next hearing. As slim as that majority is in the House, and it is a slim majority for the Republicans, it's enough. One seat majority is enough.
Majority, that's right. If we didn't have this majority, we wouldn't even have had these hearings.
That's right.
We wouldn't have any of them.
Democrats
and
didn't
then
want to ask
today
these
we've got
questions.
Hunter Biden's.
Right.
Today we've got Hunter Biden's business partners. So on to the next one.
On to the next war. All right, Congressman Waltz, thanks for joining us as always.